What if I told you that one of the reasons why you're struggling to figure out the corporate world is because you don't actually have a strategy? And then what if I told you I can actually help you build a strategy today? If you're new here, my name is Steph, and I run this platform called Success with Steph to help first gen professionals learn how to play the corporate game and win. And in today's video, I am going to be sharing with you the 5 year CV that I made for myself back in 2019. Now, we'll get into what a 5 year CV actually looks like and what that means in a second. But if you like this type of content, please do make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe so that I can reach as many people as possible. Let's get into today's video. So, over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to break down what a 5 year CV actually is for me, why I decided to make one, what I included in my personal 5 year CV that I made back in 2019, and what kind of things I looked to include in the next 5 year CV that I made. Full disclaimer, I'm not going to show you my current 5 year CV. It's from 2025 to 2030. So, I'm about 8, 9 months into my like second cycle of a 5 year CV. So I guess come back in 2030 and you will see what the final results are of that CV. But I'm definitely not showing you that today, but I will tell you how I created it. Cool. So first things first, what is a 5 year CV? Now, let me just be upfront and say that this is not like an actual real CV. I just didn't know what else to call it. But what it basically is a summary of like what I wanted to be known as at the time that I wrote it. So I wrote like a little personal profile like you would have at the top of your CV, the legal skills that I wanted to hone, and then the non-legal skills that I wanted to hone. The final thing I'll say before I get into showing you my actual 5 year CV that I did back in 2019 is a little bit of context. The date of when I actually did this was on the 7th of January 2019. And just for context, this was the date where I found out that I actually had been successful in getting my training contract. So a lot of what I wrote down was A, with the understanding that I already knew that I had a training contract. And B, it was with the understanding of like, given where I was going to train, the sort of work I was going to be doing there, because obviously I knew what type of firm it was and all of that sorts of stuff. I like aligned what I wanted to get out of it to that. So it might be that the stage that you're at when you're looking to create something like this, you don't have that background context. That's perfectly fine. I just wanted to let you know that I already had that context. So that's why the CV was kind of created in the way it was created. With all of that background context, though, let's get into the CV that I created 6 years ago now. Okay, cool. So here it is. So, like I mentioned, first things first is the personal profile section. So, I wanted to qualify, I wanted to get some kind of client secondment. That's what the in house work experience bit meant because I was training in private practice. So, that was already a given. In terms of the skills I wanted to have, I wanted to do a lot around communication. I wanted to build my personal brand as an educator, so build like my thought leadership skills. And I also, at the time, was also setting up my businesses. So I knew I already had like entrepreneurial skills that I wanted to be able to use in the workplace as well. I wanted to do stuff beyond my role. So I didn't just want to be like someone who just, I don't know, woke up at 9, drafted some contracts all day and then went to bed. Like I wanted to do a bit more than that. So I wanted to get into some leadership roles. I wanted to do some stuff around like inclusion in the office, and then also stakeholder management. So working with various different people outside of just the lawyers. Global experience. So obviously, well, not obviously, but the firm that I trained at is a global firm. So I knew I was going to get global experience, but I just wanted to make sure that I put myself in the best position to be on deals that were very much like multi-jurisdictional, cross-border, that sort of thing. And then the final point there was that I had already done a vacation scheme where I had some contentious work experience, and I knew that I didn't particularly enjoy contentious work experience. So I wanted the bulk of my experience, if not all of my experience, to be completely transactional because I just thought that I would prefer that. In terms of the core skills, some of these skills were okay, given that I was going to be a trainee solicitor, what skills would I naturally pick up? So, for example, contract drafting, negotiation, communication. But then I also thought to myself, what am I naturally good at? And what do I see for myself in the future? And what kind of skills do I also want to gain alongside the technical skills that I probably already will gain? So for legal skills, I knew that I wanted to qualify, like I already mentioned. I wanted to get some transactional experience in corporate finance, IP, and tax. Funnily enough, I didn't actually do the tax and IP part. I just focused on corporate and finance. But if you watch my previous videos, I explain in a lot of detail like what seats I did, why I chose to qualify, where I chose to qualify, all of that sorts of stuff. So you can go through that. I wanted multi jurisdictional work experience. I wanted to hone my contract drafting and negotiation skills. I wanted to get practice with my public speaking, actually, and I wanted to speak at legal conferences. And this one is such a funny one because I actually, last year, I believe it was in September, yeah, end of September last year, I was invited to speak at the largest legal conference for Black lawyers in the UK. Like, that is so crazy. That's something that I wrote down in 2019 happened in 2024, right at the end of my 5 year stint for this CV. Anyway, I wanted to do some teaching in a legal capacity. Again, this one was so funny because I was a guest lecturer for a postgraduate university course in ESG, and the reason why I was given that opportunity is, again, it links to some of the other skills, but because I was positioning myself as someone who was a thought leader in that space, like the relevant team who organizes this then came to ask me like, oh yeah, like we know you do this, would you be interested in teaching this particular module or whatever? And I was like, yeah, of course. And again, it's because this is something that I had written down, so I think that's amazing. Legal research, just because I think generally knowing how to research is an important skill. And then legal thought leadership. In terms of additional skills, so this is probably the bit that's a little bit more interesting for everyone who's watching, but I really wanted to like gain and hone my leadership skills. Now, reason being is that as you get more senior in your career, especially in corporate, one of the top skills that you want to be able to demonstrate, like when you are going for promotion, when you're applying for new jobs, like whatever it is that you're doing, is leadership. Because the more senior you get, you want to show that you can manage like other people, especially if you're working in a hierarchical company. You want to show that you can manage other people and you can manage them well to empower them to do their work really, really well so that you can do your work really, really well. So I wanted to get as much experience in that as possible. Public speaking and communication. So I wanted to deliver training. That leads to me wanting to be like known as an educator. So that's why training was specifically the way that I wanted to hone that communication skill. Thought leadership with high engagement rates on LinkedIn. So again, actually a little bit of context. At that time, I was already building my brand on LinkedIn. So I had already been known for posting things like how to succeed in your application, how to do a good CV, how to do a good cover letter, all of those sorts of posts. So I just wanted to transition my like knowledge base from, okay, I can teach people how to like get into their careers, to this is currently what I do and I'm good at this, so I can teach people how to be good at it too, sort of thing. Then we've got cross functional collaboration. So, working with lawyers and corporate functions. That was really, really important for me. I didn't want to be someone who would just like go to work, draft some contracts, and go home. And then finally, project management. With this one, it was really just because if you know me well, time management is something that like I've always been known for. And I kind of just felt like in an employability context, project management was probably the most equivalent next step that could lead on from that. I don't know if that's actually right or not, but that's just how it worked out in my head. So that's why that was on my CV. I go through all of that in a lot of detail because something that I do every single year, and I think I do always share this on my Instagram, or I share it somewhere. I don't know, but something I always do is I set annual goals, right? And I set my goals in my 8 little categories. I'll pop the little template on screen that I create on Canva. But one of the categories is careers, and people often ask, like, how do you think about your goals? How do you set your goals? Da, 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 da. For the career part of that box, this is actually how I do it. So this is obviously an old CV that I created back in 2019. It ended end of last year. If I was to be creating a career goal off the back of this, I would look at this and I would say, okay, over the next year, you want to hone your contract drafting and negotiation skills, right? Because those are core legal technical skills. And in the first year, like those are probably things that are easier for me to do. But then I'd probably also say something like I want to build my relationship with people who I think are really good with some of the other skills that I've highlighted. So if there are partners who I think are really good at public speaking, or partners who are really good at leadership, or cross-functional collaboration, all of that sorts of stuff, I would start building my relationship with them in that year one. Then in year two, it would be an evaluation of how well I did in year one in terms of my goals, and then seeing what else I can do until across the 5 years, I've basically ticked off everything on this CV. And that's pretty much what I did. Final thing that I want to do in this video, because I run through how I made my second 5 year CV, so the one that's 2025 to 2030. And For the personal profile, I pretty much did the same thing as I did last time. So I just thought to myself, what do I want to be known as in the next 5 years? For the core skills, it's basically like a step up. So in my mind, the core skills that I noted in 2019 were pretty much the foundational skills that I would want to have as a junior professional entering any profession, right? Apart from the very like legal specific skills, all of the other skills are just generic employability skills that I would want to have set as a junior professional. So in my mind, I then kind of looked at, and especially with the help of like ChatGPT and any other generative AI tool, to be honest, you can kind of just ask like, what kind of skills would you need to have to be like a really successful mid-year professional, and then you can note those skills down. The other thing I did, the government recently released, and I'll link it in the comments down below, it's kind of like a roadmap of like the skills that will be needed in 2030 for the jobs that will be available in 2030. Things like creativity, adaptability, all of that sorts of stuff. But like, I looked at that paper mainly because in my capacity as one of the co-founders of Dossier, which is a social enterprise that helps 14 to 18-year-olds gain employability skills, that is the sort of thing that I need to be up to date with. But also in my own personal capacity, I just thought that that was really interesting. So actually today, like as I'm recording this video, I have gone back and updated my 2025 to 2030 CV with some of those things that were in that paper. So hopefully you find this really helpful. I have been screaming about the 5 year CV on a lot of different apps for a very long time, but I thought now is a good time for me to actually run through with you the 5 year CV that I created for myself so that you can see in practice how you can create one for yourself. And then, yeah, this should help you thrive in corporate spaces. If you like this type of content, please do make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll be back again soon.